Okay, hi everybody, thanks for coming to my session. I'm Mathieu Ancelin, I'm developer at Surly. I mostly do Scala, Java, and a lot of web app stuff with JavaScript. I also contribute to some open source projects like Reactive Couchbase, and I'm a member of the Poitou-Charentes Jug in France. So, today we're going to talk about React. So I just want to know who already played with React, done the tutorial, stuff like that. Okay, not so much. And who is using React in a real-life project or even in production? Okay, I think nobody. Okay, okay, great guys. Okay, so React is a JavaScript library to create views, to create user interface. It was created by Facebook in 2011 and open source 2 years later. So it's just a view library to create views. It's not a full stack framework like Angular or Ember. There is no HTTP client, there is no persistent collection or whatever. It's just rendering view and response to user events like clicking or keyboard inputs, stuff like that. So it's used at Facebook on the Facebook web app, obviously, and in many other backend application or internal application. A good example is the Instagram web application. It's purely built with React, and Facebook claims that they are using around 15,000 components in production. There are also a lot of big users of React, like Netflix. They are doing everything using React. Coursera, Sony, Yahoo, HipChat, Reddit. There is a lot of people that are using React right now. So, there is two main concepts around React. The first one is that the view is declarative. So you have to express what your view must look like at any point in time, given some input data. And whenever this data changes, React will just re-render the whole stuff. But it will be clever enough to only impact the DOM where things actually changed. So let's take an example. Here we've got a favorite button that we can toggle. If I want to write some code to make this button, using imperative code, I have to check first if there is a favorite, if there is not already a gray button on the screen, and then I can do whatever I need to do, remove the whole star and add the gray star. And if there is no favorite, I need to do the opposite. That's perfectly good code. It doesn't mutate the DOM if there is no need to, but it's just a nightmare to read, a nightmare to maintain. It's just horrible code. I don't want to write this code. I want to write simpler stuff. With React, you just have to tell what your view will look like whenever there is a favorite or not. So a gray star or a white star. But in React, you will write something like that, and when you write something like that, React will do the boring code we've seen before in place. So that's very cool. So you might wonder, what about performances? Because React renders the whole stuff each time you change the input data. So what about performances? So let's take a more complex example here. When I toggle the button, the text here changes too. To be efficient, React uses virtual DOM to work. So the virtual DOM is just an in-memory structure that looks like the DOM. And whenever React will render a view, it will take a snapshot of the old view, it will render the new view and make a diff between the two to compute a list of change to impact the actual DOM. And it works very good. So for our component, we have container, that is a div, an image, a span, and a text node. And with the React algorithm and the React virtual DOM, the only thing that will change when you toggle the button is the attribute, the source attribute of the image, the class attribute of the span, and the text node inside the span. So the virtual DOM is just a trick, a technical trick to make it work perfectly, but it allows you to write simple code and to be efficient at the same time, so that's cool. The second main concept of React is that everything is a component. So with React, you build components. You don't assemble some kind of templates or stuff like that. You write a small, autonomous, reusable, and composable piece of code that you assemble together to make bigger components, and so on and so on. So let's see what it looks like. So here I've got a React component. It's created with React create class, and there is a render method that returns some kind of weird HTML. So it's actually pure JavaScript, but with the help of a little preprocessor, you can write your JavaScript this way to look like HTML. So let's write our own component here. I will call it hello. And I will use it here. So I just have my component here is hello, so I just have to write something like that to use it. I will change the code here to see it happening, and it's working. My component is rendered just here. So now I can play with it. I can, of course, have more than one instance of the component. That's something we can do. We can have some dynamic code using curly braces expressions. So here I've got the date. And I can register some handlers to do whatever you need to do. Here I will try to refresh first date the component. And now I can click on my component and change the value. So that's pretty simple. Actually, there is something funny here. These slides are a pure React application. I use a library called Spectacle to write my slides. So these slides are React components, so I can do something like that. It should work, okay. And I can write something like, oops. And it should work. Yep, it's working. That's pretty nice. So React doesn't care what are your components. You can mix whatever you want. It's just component assembling, and it works. So now let's see how to put some data inside our components. So the first way is to use properties. So properties are defined at a component instantiation. It's like HTML attributes when you use it in ES6, the weird HTML language. You can define some default value, and you can also validate your properties to tell developers that they are using the component in a bad way. So let's see how it works. We are going to make a more clever hello component. Here I'm using it. And I will try to display the property called who. I will give it a default value. That will be adverb. And try it. So okay, it's working. And now, if I want to pass an actual value to who, I'm just using that as an HTML attribute, and it just works. There is also a very special property in React. It's called children. So the children allows you to do something like that. Oops. So I can make a list of language I like to use. Oops. And if I save, I've got the list of my language inside my component. So I can wrap other components inside my components, and that's pretty handy. The second way to put data inside your components is the state. So it represents the internal state of a component. So the state is mutable, ideally only by the component itself, but sometimes people are not ideal. And any mutation of the state will trigger a new view rendering and the virtual DOM stuff and the diff stuff, etc., etc. So let's try to build a likes button, like in Google Plus or maybe Facebook. Oops, and no. So, copying the ES6 and using it here. Okay. So now I want to display the number of likes I've got. So I will use the state to do that. I will add an initial value for the state. Okay. It should work now. Ooh. Is there a typo or something? Whoop. Where? Yeah, it's liker. Oh, good one. Okay. So it should work. Okay. So now I can add a button. This button is just horrible. I will add some style. Okay. So now I can add a function that will mutate my state. Oops. And pass the old value of likes and add 1. And now I just have to add a handler to make it work, and it should work. No, just .like, sorry. So it's working. Okay, so each component can be aware of its own life cycle, so you can know whenever the component will be mounted into the DOM, whenever the component will be updated from the DOM into the DOM, and whenever a component will be unmounted from the DOM. There is also a very interesting function that is called should_update_component that you can define, and by default it returns true, but if you return false, it tells to the React diff algorithm that the component did not change, so don't take it into account in your diff algorithm, and it's just a huge performance boost for your components. So let's see how we can use component did mount, for instance. I've got a value here. I will pass a value here. And now, if I use component did mount, so it will be triggered whenever the component will be mounted into the DOM, I will say to it that I want to mutate the state and assign a new value to value. So if I save, I will have the default value, and 2 seconds later, the new value. So it's this kind of thing you can do with the life cycle. Here is a good place to call some web services or something. You might wonder how to use web components inside your React components. So web components are supported as ES6 lives, so you can use web components inside your components, but you can't expose React component as a web component, even if it's a good fit. It's not supported with React out of the box. You have to use some community libs. There is a lot on the internet, so you can find one. And the React team is working on the integration, so it will happen in some time. If you are the kind of person that writes tests, I hope you are, there is a test util package in React that you can use to render your component inside some test environment, to make some assertion on it, and to simulate clicks, event in general on your components. It works with all the test runners like Jasmine, Matcha, or even Jest, the Facebook test runner. The ecosystem of React is growing every day. It's like madness. So I will not spend too much time on it because I don't have much time. If you want to know more about it, I suggest that you go on GitHub on the Awesome React project. It's a curated list of tutorials, libraries, and stuff around React. It's really, really good, and it's a good starting point if you want to learn React. So now we are going to code. So we are going to code a Reddit client. So Reddit is like a big forum where you can, with some topics, where you can post image, links, or whatever. You can comment on the post, and you can vote the post. So the reader is pretty simple. There is here a top bar where there is the number of stories you have to read. There is a list here with all the stories you have to read, and each time you read one, the style change, etc., and you have the images and the vote here. Okay? So let's write it. So here I've got my default component, and here a Reddit component. So I will use the Reddit one, and unfortunately it renders nothing. So I will add something to see if it works. Yes, it's working. So now we are going to start with the top bar here. So the top bar is already here, but there is nothing inside. So we are going to make it work. So inside the top bar, we have some kind of message that say you have this.props.unread stories. And we need some default value. Okay, it should work. Yes, it's working. I can try to pass another value here. And it's still working. Just need some style here because it's ugly. It should be better, yeah. Okay, so that's good with the top bar. Now we have to do the sidebar. So the sidebar will be here. And now that we have a sidebar, we need to put some data inside. And we need some data inside our application. So we need some stories to display. We need to know what are the stories that we already read, and we need to know what is the selected story. We also need to know the subreddit. It's the topic we want to fetch. And we are going to fetch funny stuff. So here I can pass my stories because they are in the state, even if it's empty. And now we can fetch the stories. So we are going to use component.didMount to do that. Here I've got a helper to fetch a subreddit. Now I need the first story to select it automatically. Inside the API, everything is wrapped inside some data object, so I just have to do that. And I do my state mutation here. So the selected one is the first one, and the red array is equals to first.id. So it should be enough here. Now let's get to the sidebar component. So inside the sidebar, the only thing I want to do is to iterate over my stories. So here, remember the data stuff. It's just boring, so I get rid of it. And now I need to display each story inside the sidebar. So to do that, I will use a new component that is story cell. And in the story cell, I just pass the current story to display it. So it should work. Now we have some story cell, but it's not really interesting because we only add the name of the component. So we are going to modify that. First, we are going to, to display the title. So let's see if it works. Yep, it's working. Now we are going to add some styling. Yeah, I got a helper for that because we need some complex stuff here. So it's still working, but it's gray, okay? So now we are going to add the thumbnail of the story. 60 pixels should be enough. And the source of the image is this props story thumbnail. Is there an issue? Or no, it's just the network. There is something bad here. I will add some style. It should be enough, and that's good. So now we are already good, but there is a problem with the style. Everything is gray. So I'm going to pass some new data inside the story cell, so the compute cell style will know which is what is the red story, the current story, etc., etc. So inside my sidebar here, I will pass the selected story because we need to know it. We need to pass the red story because we need to know it. And I've got to do the same for the story cell because it's in the story cell that we need it. So we have the selected stuff. And here I don't need the read, but if the story is unread. So I will do something like that. And it should be enough. Okay, so it's working, but as you can see, I can't select my story because I do not have something to do that. So I will create a function to mutate the state of my application to do that. So I call it select story. And the code is, it's pretty easy. I just have to do a set state with the selected story and a new read version. So I will take the previous version of red and add the selected ID. So now I can add this function in my props and do the same here. Okay, and here in the story cell, I will add a new function to select itself. Oops. And I just call the function that I have in my props that is called select with the story in my props. It should be enough, and I just need to add a handler for that. And it should work. And it's working. So now we just have to code the viewer part. So the viewer part is pretty simple. The viewer is here. So we can see if it works. Come on. Okay, pretty long. The viewer will need to know what is the selected story. So I just add a property for that. Okay. And now let's go to the code of the viewer. So the viewer can have a story that is null, because here at the beginning of my application, the selected story is null. So here I just got to add some message, nothing here. So you should see, okay, you've seen it a little bit. Now we need to know what is the image we want to display. So it's on the story. So it's the source. So here we need to know the API of Reddit. Okay, and now we can work. First thing, I will show the votes. I'll do the same thing for the downs. So it should work. Let's see it. Yep, it's working. Pretty great. And now we just need to display the image. So for the image, we need some styling to do some rescaling of the image. So I get something for that. And here we had the image. And it should work, and it's working. So the only thing that left is, come on guys, it's the unread part here. We need to make it work. So here I just have to compute what are the number of unread story. To do that, I've got some little piece of code here. And I just have to put it there. And it should work. Yeah, it's working. So whenever I click on a story, I've got my counter.decrements. And the last thing we can do to see if everything works is to change the subreddit. Here, I will go on pics instead of funny. And I should have other pics. So it's working perfectly. So it's good for the live coding parts. And it's the end of my presentation about React. So in conclusion, what I can say is that React is just awesome. That now I hope you want to do React at work, that we will start from Monday. And I get some time for questions, so don't hesitate. Thank you. Any question? I try to see on the app if the network is working. No question? Okay. So thank you for your attention. I still get the mic. Yep.
Is React often used in large projects?
Yes, it's really, the question was, is React used in large projects? And the answer is yes, because, for instance, at Netflix, everything is built with React. The client on mobile, on Android and iOS, maybe the app on your TV, maybe the app on your console, game station or whatever. The website is in React, so it's really used everywhere. On the BBC website, on the Reddit mobile website, on a lot of people are using it, and the best example is Facebook. They are using it on the Facebook web app. So it's just one of the most used web app in the world, so I guess it's a big project.
Do you have to build a lot on top of it?
What?
Do you have to build a lot on top of it?
It's a really simple framework, so yes, you have to add some part, but there is other libraries provided by Facebook to organize your code, to add some intelligent fetching for your web services and stuff like that. So there is other tool. React is just the first stone of the application. Yep.
How about using web components inside a React application?
So the question was how to use web components inside the React application. So it's really simple. You just have to, for instance, here, if you've got a component that is, I don't know, G+ button, you just have to do that with camel case that will be translated to dash, and it will work, just like that. Another question? Okay, no more question.